I was scrolling through a mainstream finance site last month, and a headline popped up that made me physically angry. It read, "Why retiring before 65 is a catastrophic mistake for 90% of Americans." The article went on to claim that anyone who walks away from full-time work before 65 will outlive their savings, become a burden to their children, and spend their final years in poverty. That's not just wrong. It's dangerous. It's the kind of fear-mongering that keeps people stuck in jobs they hate, trading the only years they have left with full energy for a few extra dollars that will sit in a bank account they'll never get to enjoy. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Because once you understand the math, the timeline, and the trade-offs of working past 58, you'll never look at full-time work the same way again. Let's start with the number 58. Why 58? Why not 60 or 65 or 70? Because for most people, 58 is the exact point where the math flips. You've been working for 30, 35 years. You've maxed out your 401k, maybe done some Roth conversions, paid off your mortgage, maybe even paid for your kids' college. You sit down with your statements, you run the numbers. Your savings plus Social Security at 67, plus any pension, covers your annual spending. You don't need to work another day. But here's the thing. Most people don't stop. They keep working. They tell themselves, just one more year, I'll have a bigger cushion. But that cushion, it's made of days you can't get back. Every year you work past 58, you're trading 260 workdays minus vacation for a slightly bigger number in your 401k. But those 260 days, they're days you could have spent hiking, traveling, playing with grandkids, working on a passion project. Days you'll never get back once your health starts to decline. Wait, you might say. I'm healthy now at 58, I'll be healthy at 68. Maybe. But even if you don't have a major health scare, your energy levels drop. I've talked to dozens of retirees. The difference between what they could do at 60 versus 70 is massive. At 60, you can do a 10-mile hike, fly to Europe for 2 weeks, help your kid move house. At 70, you might be able to do those things, but you'll be tired for 3 days after. Your recovery time doubles, your joints hurt. You don't want to sleep in a hostel in Italy at 70, you want a nice hotel with an elevator. But that's not the same. The go-go years of retirement are your late 50s and early 60s. If you miss those, you miss the best part of retirement. All the travel, all the hobbies, all the time with family that you dreamed of, that's for your 60s, not your 70s. So working past 58 isn't being safe. It's stealing from your future self. Another reason people stay at work past 58. They're waiting for the right time. I'll retire when interest rates go up, so I can lock in a higher annuity rate. I'll retire when the stock market hits 50,000, so I can sell high. Let's be real, that time never comes. There's always a reason to wait. In 2020, people said wait until after the election. In 2021, wait until inflation drops. In 2022, wait until the Fed cuts rates. In 2023, wait until the market recovers. If you tie your retirement date to economic conditions, you'll never retire, because the economy is always changing. Rates go up, rates go down. The market hits record highs, then crashes 20%. That's normal. Real retirement success isn't about catching the perfect moment. It's about having a portfolio that can handle ups and downs. A mix of equities for growth, bonds for stability, cash for short-term needs. A withdrawal strategy that adjusts to market conditions, like the guardrail strategy. If the market is up, you withdraw a little more. If it's down, you withdraw a little less. That's how you retire without worrying about timing the market. Not by working an extra 5 years to wait for the right conditions. And here's a variable almost no one talks about. The tax window between 59.5 and your RMD age. For most people watching this, if you were born after 1959, your RMD age is 73. Or 75 if you were born in 1960 or later. That means between 59.5 and 73, you have a 13 to 15-year window where you can take money out of your traditional IRA or 401k without the 10% early withdrawal penalty. You still pay income tax, but you're in control. You can take out exactly what you need, do Roth conversions in low tax brackets, shrink your future RMDs so you don't get pushed into higher tax brackets in your 70s. But if you keep working full-time past 59.5, you're probably in a 22% or 24% tax bracket. If you retire at 58, drop your taxable income to zero, you're in the 10% or 12% bracket. That's a huge difference. You can convert $20K, $30K a year from traditional to Roth, pay almost no tax, and never have to take RMDs on that money again. But if you keep working, you can't do that. You're stuck. Then when you hit 73, RMDs kick in. You're forced to take out $50K, $100K a year, which pushes you into a 32% bracket, triggers Medicare Part B and D surcharges because your income is too high. That's a cost you can't undo. I ran the numbers for a couple last year. He was 60, working full-time, making $150K a year. They had $1.8 million in IRAs. If he retired at 60, they could convert $40K a year to Roth for 13 years. Pay $800 a year in tax, 12% bracket. Total tax, $62,400. If he worked until 65, then retired, they'd have 8 years to convert. But their RMDs at 73 would be $110K a year, pushing them into the 24% bracket, plus $10K a year in Medicare surcharges. Total extra cost over 10 years, $140,000. All because he wanted to work 5 more years to get a few extra dollars in his 401k. That's not a trade-off that makes sense. And here's the thing about retirement planning. You don't get to redo it. I love woodworking. I've learned 10 different woodworking projects from YouTube videos over the years. If I mess up a birdhouse, I throw it away, start over. No big deal. But retirement? You can't redo that. If you mess up your withdrawal strategy in year 1, take out too much during a market crash, you can't go back to work and earn that money back. You're stuck. That's why you need to plan ahead. Not just I have enough money, but how am I going to take out that money? What's my tax strategy? When am I claiming Social Security? What's my health care plan before Medicare kicks in at 65? You need a full plan, not just a savings number. Because the savings number is only the start. Now let's talk about the fear of spending. I've met people with $2 million in their portfolios who are terrified to spend $100 on dinner. They're so used to saving, to growing their nest egg, that spending feels like failure. They think if I spend this money, I'll run out. But the data says otherwise. The 4% rule, which is super conservative, assumes you withdraw 4% a year, adjusted for inflation. William Bengen, who created the 4% rule, said 96% of retirees using that rule end up with more money when they die than when they retired. Let that sink in. 96% of people who follow the most conservative withdrawal rule possible end up with more money than they started with. But they spent their healthy years too scared to enjoy it. That's the real tragedy. Not running out of money, but running out of time while you have money left. I had a client with $2.3 million in savings. He refused to spend any money on travel, said he needed to leave it to his kids. He died at 72 of a heart attack, never took a single trip, never did any of the things he wanted to do. His kids got the money, but he got nothing. Don't be that person. You worked for your money. You deserve to enjoy it while you're still healthy enough to do so. We've been sold this lie that you need $1 million, $2 million to retire. But that's based on a model that assumes your spending stays the same every year. It doesn't. JP Morgan analyzed data from 5 million retirees, and they found spending follows 3 phases. Go-go years, 65 to 74, you spend 1.9% more a year, mostly on travel, hobbies, home renovations. Slow-go years. So it's 0.5% a year, more on home maintenance, social activities. No-go years, 85 plus, spending drops 0.5% a year because you're less active. Traditional retirement models use CPI, which assumes 2 to 3% spending growth every year. That overestimates how much you need by 26%. So if the experts say you need millions, you probably only need $740,000. I ran the numbers for a woman last year. She wanted to retire at 55. The rules said she needed $965,000. When we accounted for her spending dropping after 75 and Social Security at 67, she only needed $600,000. She retired at 55, sold her big house, moved to a smaller condo, and she's been traveling Southeast Asia for 18 months. No regrets. She has more money now than when she retired, because her spending is lower than she planned. Let's talk about RMDs, required minimum distributions. 84% of retirees just take the RMD every year, and that's their entire withdrawal strategy. That's a mistake. RMDs are the minimum you have to take, not the maximum you should take. The IRS forces you to take out a certain amount every year starting at 73, and that money is taxed as ordinary income. If you have a big traditional IRA, those RMDs will push you into higher tax brackets, trigger Medicare surcharges, all because you didn't plan ahead. The smart play is to use that 10-15 year window between 59.5 and RMD age to shrink your traditional IRA balance. Do Roth conversions, take out money to fund your lifestyle, so when RMDs kick in, they're small. But you can't do that if you're still working full-time past 58, because your income is too high to be in a low tax bracket. You're stuck with massive RMDs later, all because you wanted to work 1 more year to get a 3% raise. Social Security is another area people overcomplicate. The experts say wait until 70 to claim, get the max benefit. But that's not for everyone. If you have a family history of early death, if you're in poor health, claiming at 62 might make more sense. Sure, your monthly check is 30% smaller, but you get 8 years of checks instead of 3. If you die at 75, you get way more total money claiming at 62 than waiting until 70. I had a client who waited until 70, got $3,100 a month, but he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 72. He couldn't enjoy the money, his wife had to manage it all. If he'd claimed at 62, he'd have gotten 2,167s a month for 10 years. Total $260K more than he got waiting. That's money he could have used to travel, to spoil his grandkids. The max benefit doesn't matter if you're not alive to spend it. For married couples, staggering claims works even better. One spouse claims at 62 to cover current expenses. The other waits until 70 to max out the survivor benefit. That way you have cash flow early, and a higher floor later. It's not a one-size-fits-all rule. It's about what works for your life. How do you actually structure your withdrawals so you don't run out of money? The bucket strategy works way better than the 4% rule for most people. Bucket 1. Cash and near cash for the next 1 to 3 years of expenses. Checking, savings, short-term CDs. This is for if the market crashes, you don't have to sell stocks when they're down. Bucket 2. Conservative investments for years 4-10, bonds, balanced funds. Bucket 3. Growth investments for 10+ years, stock funds, long-term growth. This way, you're not selling growth investments when the market is down. You're living off bucket 1, then bucket 2, while bucket 3 grows. I've seen this work for dozens of clients. Even if the market drops 30% in year 1 of retirement, you're fine. You have 3 years of cash, so you don't have to touch your stocks. When the market recovers, you replenish bucket 1. That removes the biggest risk of retirement, sequence of returns risk. The risk that the market crashes early in retirement, so you have to sell investments at a loss. The bucket strategy eliminates that risk. But you have to set it up before you retire. You can't wing it. The math is only half the battle. The other half is the psychological side. You've been working for 40 years. You have a routine, a title, a sense of purpose tied to your job. When you retire, that's gone. You need to replace it with something. Not just I'll garden or I'll watch TV, but actual purpose. I took up woodworking when I first retired. Then I started this channel. It gives me a reason to get up in the morning. If you don't plan that part, you'll be bored, you'll feel useless, and you might go back to work just for the structure. That's why I tell people, before you retire, map out your first 6 months. What are you going to do every day? Join a hiking club, volunteer at a local animal shelter. Take a class at the community college, something that gives you structure. Don't just wake up on day 1 of retirement with no plan. That's a recipe for misery. I've seen people retire with $3 million, then go back to work 6 months later because they were bored. Don't let that be you. Plan your purpose as carefully as you plan your finances. So let's bring this all back to the start. 58 is the turning point. That's when the math says you have enough. That's when you have to make a choice. Keep trading your healthiest, most energetic years for money you don't need, or walk away and buy back your time. I've never met a single person who regretted retiring early. Not one. I've met dozens who regretted waiting too long. Who said, I should have retired at 58, I could have hiked the Appalachian Trail, but now my knees won't let me. I should have retired at 58. I could have spent more time with my mom before she died, but I was stuck at work. Don't be that person, do the math. If your savings plus Social Security covers your spending, walk away. Use that 10 to 15 year tax window. Set up your withdrawal strategy. Plan your purpose, and enjoy the only years you have left with full mobility. Retirement isn't about stopping work. It's about starting your real life. The one you've been working for all along. The one that's waiting for you, if you're brave enough to walk away.